Welcome to Level Up with Levels. I'm Cate Sword with Cate Sword Consulting Plus Design. A little bit about me. I'm a certified interior designer and CIDQ tested. I started using AutoCAD in 1984 on version 2. I started training in 1989, so that's been about 34 years. I was a trainer tech support at CAP before it was 2020 for 8 years. And then I started my own business, CSCD, in 1997. So since I've been in business for myself, I've been training CET designers since 2006, so that's 16 years. And I am still learning stuff every year. And I've been into every single CET conference. So I probably trained more than half of you at one time or another, so it's nice to see you again. So what are we talking about with levels? The tool is used for doing different floor heights. So when you have multiple floors, you're going to want to use it. And the reason we do it is to combine areas together in the rendering, the calculations and the output. So like when you have a mezzanine or say a floor height, like a raised floor area, and you want to show some steps up to a different floor. So the furniture snaps to the right levels and you can show them together in one rendering. You can combine the product in one calculation and you can do some printing with one drawing. Now you don't need to use these if you have multiple floors that aren't rendered together in the same rendering. So on a multi-story building, I wouldn't recommend it unless of course you're seeing this multiple stories together. Give me some examples. So my first example is a rendering that I did in CET, and then I exported it to Twinmotion. But you can see I have different levels going on. I've got lighting and railings and everything. So this is real easy. I actually duplicated the floor to make these others, all right? But instead of looking at renderings I did, let's use some that were entered into the competition. Here's one from Anna Carmel Tan. And you can see that she's got a level here, and she's actually got another level where you step up to a little higher area here. So your furniture is there, furniture's here, it makes it a much more dynamic space. Another entry, Susie Sheehan, has her level up here with some stairs going up, ping pong table, all right? Another entry, you can see this very dramatic rendering with the levels on the back. And you can actually see where there's windows on this level and you're looking through those windows to the exterior windows. I think this one's kind of amazing. Right, so now I'm going to go ahead and do some demos. I'm going to demo these different topics and we'll come back to the PowerPoint in a sec. Let's switch over to the drawing. There we go. So I've got a blank drawing and I'm really going to just go through sort of all of the basics on what levels are. As you notice, I have a sort of a shortened component tab here. I've got my wall drawing, which we know how to draw walls. I'm going to go down to the second tab, architectural. The very first section on architectural is carpets and coverings. And I want to make sure you notice that it looks very similar to levels. Carpets and coverings really are just another carpet that you can put on the floor, whereas levels are going to add a lot more to the drawing. I frequently get these two mixed up when I'm drawing and I'm in a hurry and I want to do something. So what I do is when I'm working on levels, I minimize carpets and coverings. And when I'm working on just a floor without levels, I minimize levels. Just so that I don't accidentally grab the wrong thing. It's easy to mix them up. So when I go in here to levels, the first tab I have is level settings. In my level settings, I've got some things that I can turn on and turn off. One, I only want to edit the architectural products, the walls, and the levels when that tab is selected. Today I'm going to show my boundaries and I'm going to combine my product in the calculation. We'll come back to that later. And I only want to edit the active level in 2D. That's really helpful. I've unchecked always move objects with their levels and always move the levels when the level above or below. There's a lot of times when you move something on one level, it's grabbing all the others. I don't always want that on, so I uncheck it. Okay, and I only edit it when I'm here, which you know from walls is really nice. You can only edit the walls when you're in the actual wall drawing tab. Same thing here. So my three different types of levels that I can insert a rectangle, a circular level, and a custom level. The rectangular one's one I'll start out with. When I bring it in, I've got my properties up here. It's going to be at a 0 elevation. And let's say that I'm going to make a, we'll say 60 foot, let me turn my numlocks on, and 60 foot enter by, we'll just say 40 foot room, right? And you can see that it's inserted the level, all right? It has the floor of my level, and then the carpet's expanded the way it always does. You can see the height of it. And when I click on the floor itself, I get some properties. It's called level 1. It's at the elevation 0. And I maybe want to give it a thickness of, say, let's say it's going to be 18 inches, okay? Because I want it to step up. When you come into the building, you have to step up. All right, so now that you can see there's a thickness to it, I can also change my ceiling height. It defaulted to the 3 meters that that Configura defaults to. So I'm going to go in here and say that this is a 9 foot high ceiling. That's why I like to have these boundaries on here, to see my ceiling height. Now maybe the space isn't really rectangular. I can edit it. It's a shape command. I can get a grip on it and stretch the corners, but I can also go over and do some things like add a point. So maybe I want to have maybe a cutout back here. And neat thing is when I'm putting that point, I have my distance in my properties. So I'll just say I want it to be, say, 5 foot from the corner, right? So there's a point. You can see it put in here, and I can get a grip on it and drag it just like all the other shape tools. And I'm just going to say that I want to drag it down 5 foot and enter. So now I have a little cutout on my floor. I could also do something where maybe I'm going to put another point. I want to make this an angled wall on here. So I'm going to add a point, and I'm going to say this one's going to be, say, 9 foot from the corner. Okay. And then I can stretch this point up. Now the problem is that when I stretch it up, it's not really going I can't type a distance in here. I can kind of eyeball it, but I can't type a distance. So what I'm going to do in this case, just another little trick, I'm going to put a help point in there. I'm going to snap to that end. I'm going to pull up, I'll say 9 foot and enter. And now when I grab it and I drag that, I can snap right to that end. All right. So now I have a building that's shaped a little differently, the way I want it to be, all right? I can also put a second floor, and this is where we get into some of the neat things about it. Before I do that, let me click on it one more time. It's called level 1. Over on the left at the bottom, this is where I can rename it. And level 1's not bad, but I'm going to rename this to be my first floor. And now whenever I click on the first floor, it'll say it's the first floor. And I'm going to add in, and it says first floor over here. We'll get into this a little bit in a minute. Let's say I'm going to put in a custom shaped level. All right. Maybe I'm going to kind of start here. I actually want it to cover that. And I'm going to guess that it goes to about there. Maybe not. I'll go to here. And maybe something like, maybe this mezzanine. It's a little odd shaped mezzanine, but it's just kind of like that. Some cool things about shapes, if you didn't know this about most shapes, is that when you get a grip on the corner, you can snap right to those little help points. I love, love, love that. My little wanting everything to line up. Oh, that makes me happy. I also can, there's the little add a curve. Let's add a curve to this mezzanine. So there's a little, just a little roundness to this. And maybe I meant for this to come all the way to there. All right. So I've got my mezzanine set up the way I like. But you'll notice in the second floor, in the 3D, it's sort of overlapping the first floor. It did snap to an elevation of 18, but really I want it to be an elevation from the 0 of the carpet, 9 foot plus 18, which is 10 foot 6, right? And again, I'm going to give it a thickness. So if I don't give it a thickness, it's going to look weird in my renderings because it's just a plane. I'm going to say that my floors are 12 inches thick. And it went up 12 inches. So from here to there, it's still 10 foot or 9 foot. And then I want my ceiling to be 9 foot again. 9 foot. There we go. All right, that's looking pretty good. I also need to rename this. So I'll have to do it over on the left in the properties area. And I'll call this M-E-Z, mezzanine. There we go. So I have my mezzanine and my first floor. You'll notice that I have some new buttons across the bottom. I have base, first floor, and mezzanine. And in order to really demo this, I'm going to go in and let me bring in a quick favorite so I can, let me put this table and chairs. If I set my table and chairs down here in, like, I'm going to do it in the 3D. On the base comes out there. I can set it here. Let me put a couple sets on the first floor. See how they're going in there nice and neat? I can also set them on the second floor, my mezzanine. And you'll also notice that as I did this, things were doing some interesting things. Items were doing some interesting things in the 2D. Here's what's going on. If I right-click on base, that makes my base current. So it's going to make bold whatever's on the base. If I right-click on first floor, it makes the items that are on the first floor bold. And if I right-click on mezzanine, you'll see that only the items on the mezzanine. So I can see all three in the 3D. In the 2D, they're kind of grayed out when I'm not active on that. I can also turn them off. So I'm current on the first floor. If I left-click on base, it turns off my base. I can also turn off my mezzanine. So let's say that I'm working on the first floor. I could be current by right-clicking and active by left-clicking on the first floor. I can always turn these back on by left-clicking and change the current by right-clicking. Another way to change what's current, if I select it in 3D. So if I select something on my mezzanine, boom, I'm on the mezzanine. If I select something on the base, boom, I'm on the base. One other way to move between these three levels is over on the level overview. You can see that I have mezzanine, first floor, and base. If I click on mezzanine, I'm active on the mezzanine. If I click on first floor, I'm active on the first floor. And if I click on base, I'm active on the base. I also, when I click on mezzanine, I'm selecting everything that's on the mezzanine. So it kind of highlights it. It's another little thing that you can do. It lets you know, are these things on the mezzanine? Are these things on the first floor? And are these things on the base? Another cool trick over here is I can turn them off, right? So maybe I don't want to see the first floor. Another way to hide them, right? I also, if I'm working and I'm on the first floor and I can't see things on the first floor because my mezzanine is overlapping, what I'll do is I'll just go in here and I'll make my mezzanine show hide. I'll hide it. Oh, okay, now we can see through that floor. I might even, or I could have turned it off either way, but this way I can see through it. All right, a couple different ways to look at the drawing in the 3D. All right, I also need to add in here a hole so that you can maybe put some stairs. Now, adding a hole is very similar to placing a level, except when you bring it in, I'm going to bring in this rectangular level in, and instead of just putting in a new level, what I'm going to check is cut out. I can either hit my space bar or I can left click to select it. So now I'm doing a cutout and it wants to know which level I want to cut out. I'm going to say I want to cut out of the mezzanine, and let's say I'm going to put my stairs, say, over here. So I'm going to do left click here. I'm just eyeballing in some stairs like that. And voila, a hole. Super cool. I could also put in a circular hole. Let's try that. I didn't do a circular floor plan yet. I'm going to do cutout. I'm going to left click here. Let's say that it's the radius is 3 foot. Maybe it's a 3 foot spiral. Oops, I put it on the wrong level. But neat thing is, I can just click on it. Let me just grab the edge of it. And I'm going to hit my delete key. Now, in order to put it on the right level, let's right click on mezzanine and try it again. Right? Left, 3 foot. Oh, guess what I didn't do? I didn't pick cutouts, so now I have a new level, right? I have a level 3. I don't want a level 3. I'm going to hit my delete right here. It will remove the level. I also could have hit my delete key. So there, it removed the level. If I right click on here, this time I'll do it right. I'm going to do a cutout on the mezzanine, left click, 3 foot, and now I have a hole. The cutouts can be modified if you want it to be, you know, a bigger circle or a smaller circle. And I also can just delete it by hitting my delete key. So that's really neat. To put holes in a level, you use the levels to add them. And then you can just make sure that when you're bringing it in, make sure that you have cutout selected. Okay. Let's go back to the PowerPoint for a second. I just want to make some notes, things that I talked about real quick. I talked about level settings and turning on the boundaries so that it can help me see where they are. They can only be modified when you're on that active one. And you can switch between them by right-clicking on the level tab at the bottom of the screen. A couple notes on that. So now let's demo walls, windows, and doors. Let me tab back over to my drawing. Okay. I want to put in some walls. There's a neat function built right into the levels, which is add a wall. And if I wanted to insert a wall on the edge, and it's easier in the 3D, I could either, I'm going to hit my space bar, I could surround the shape, or I could do one wall at a time. I'm going to surround my first floor like that. And then I'm going to do my second floor. Now I don't want to surround the shape here. And so I'm just going to left click to place the walls where I want. Like this. Get one back here, like that. Okay? So now I've got the walls, and it does put the base on the outside and the inside. We don't really have a way around that right now. But I wanted this is a little weird because I actually want this wall to be double high. And I'm going to show you a couple tricks that I do when I want to have a double high wall and a single high wall together. One thing that I like to do is I'm going to go in here and just grab this wall and stretch it. All right, let me see if I can do that. Up to snaps to about there. It did snap to the top, which is a little weird. I'll fix that in a second. All right. And I want to, well, actually, it's 228. So let's do both heights at, instead of 228, they're 108. All right. There we go. And then I'll go to my walls tab and draw a wall. All right. Grab that wall, draw a new one that goes to here, like that. And instead of it being 10 foot, I'm going to say it's the whole height, which I just said was 228, right? And then I'll do the same for this guy, right? 228. And then another trick that I can do is if you didn't want to stretch the wall, you can also, in the walls tab, all the way down at the bottom is this trim tool, this little cutting line. And you could actually just cut through this one, like that. It cut the whole wall. I did not want it to do that. Sometimes it works, today it didn't. So we won't do it that way. I'm not sure why it's random for me. I'm just going to drag this back to here, draw another wall. Oop, it did not snap to the floor, so let's get it on the floor. Do you see how it jumped up just then? Okay. So now when I move it, I'll position it from here to there. So it's at the right corner. And then I'll make it the height 228. Excellent. So now I have walls that go all around the space. I want to now add a few windows and doors, right? Let me demonstrate doing windows first. So if I'm going to put a window in here, I'll start with windows. And I want to put a window on this level here. I can make that level current just by clicking on it. But I want to be careful not to snap to the second one. So a trick I can do is I can right-click on mezzanine. Right-click on first floor, left-click on mezzanine, and turn it off. So now when I go to put my window in, okay, and let's start from this end. And I'm going to go say, I want it to be, say, 2 foot from the corner. And I want maybe, let's say this is a 5 foot window. I'm just typing that in there, right? Easy enough. And then, like always, I can copy it, A, and, say I want it to be, 2 foot apart, and enter. I can use replicate. I can do a lot of different tools to put it in there, okay? Same for the mezzanine. When I make my mezzanine current, I can go in and bring in a window. See, I'm current on my mezzanine right now. Bring in a window. And I actually can kind of snap it to the same place as the other window, so I don't really have to think too much about this one, right? Oops, I hit the wrong point. Let's grab this and put it in the right spot. There we go. Okay. And so let's see if I can get the end like that. So they go to the right levels. However, if I do it on this wall, right, I do the same thing, and I'm going to just grab this window right here. I'm going to type A. And this time I'm going to hit my tab key. And so my right side, I want to be 24 inches from the corner. All right. And I go in and I start doing, so the whole 2 foot. That's great. But when I try and do it on the second floor, let's say 2 foot here and 2 foot. When I try and do this third one, it won't work. It's going to jump down. I don't know if you can see it very well. It's jumping down here because the elevation is 32 inches. So I have a choice. I could either make that elevation to be 10 foot plus 32 inches, or I have another cool trick that I can do. So let's get these windows out of here. I'm just going to undo until I just have one. I'm going to show you a neat trick, sort of a cool trick that you can do with windows anywhere, but this, I could have done it on this wall as well, but this is really wonderful when you're trying to do a double height wall. And that's under our arrange, replicate. This is super cool. In the arrange, replicate rectangle. So these are in the tool. We've been using them for a while. This is the replicate that's a little bit more robust because it has stacking, which is in the Z. So this is, you can think about horizontal as your in the right to left. So in your X, which I don't want that. I only want one window in my X. So I'm going to type 0. I'm sorry, 1. I want one window, all right? And my vertical, I want to go down. See how I want to go down? I want to go down, and I'm going to say, what do you think? Maybe 4 windows across here? We'll say 4 windows, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say between each one, let's say between each one, there's going to be 24 inches. Okay? Now here's the cool part. I want this window to copy up in the Z, right? So I'm going to put 2, and I'm going to say 10 foot because I want it to be exactly the same height on the second floor. So I've already done 10 foot the last time it remembered. And now when I hit apply, look at that. Is that awesome? Now, I sometimes have issues with windows on the inside. And if this happens to you, which it doesn't normally to me, but every now and then, I have a couple choices. All right. One, something that works for me a lot of times, I'll hit F5. Not today. Sometimes I'll change the height of my wall up a little and down a little. Let's put it back to 108. Oh, that helped, right? Let's try this one. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. Oh yeah, that worked. 228. It literally is going in there and recalibrating the whole wall. So if you are having issues with your windows not showing up on the inside of a wall, just change the height. Just a minute, it'll fix it. Sometimes I make it shorter and longer, but then that messes up my distance between them all. All right, now I'm going to give you one more kind of architectural tip that doesn't really, it's not necessarily a levels thing, but let's say I want to put a double door on this wall. Some of you know how to do double doors. Let's do that. I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to say, I'm going to randomly click here and I'm going to say 7 foot. So a single door at 7 foot is not a double door at 7 foot. And what I can do, I'm going to either go to properties or double click on the door. Let's double click on the door. So opens up my properties. Let's make this door a glass door. All right. And here's where the hidden gem trick is. If you pick this little drop down, left, right, there's the double. And let's make it a little bit more interesting by putting some mullions in it. All right. And when I go to my properties now, you can see that I can close those doors. Just let's make it a little more interesting like that. I think I got my bars wrong. This looks more like a prison. Let's do that again. Let's do 2 this way and only 1 this way. There we go. Less of a prison, more of a French door. So that's a little bonus tip, but what if I wanted, it does not appear to be centered. I'm a pretty good eyeballer, but I don't think it's centered. Super easy. Just use your position tool, grab the middle of the door, and then find the middle of the wall. Oh, look, I was only a couple inches off. Do you see it? There we go. Now it's centered. All right. Let's go back to the PowerPoint now. Okay. So I talked about double height walls, placing the windows on the correct level, and showing the double door centered. A bonus tip, right? One thing you're going to want to make sure is that when you do them, it's easier to start in the 3D because then it quickly goes to the right level. All right. And I showed you how to double door centered on the wall. Let's talk about stairs now. Straight or spiral landings and railings. Alt-Tab to go to my drawing. So we've got this little plan going on, and I'm going to talk about the commercial stairs. There's a lot of extensions that are free, and this is another one that's really great. You could use, there's an IBC code. I'm just going to use my custom. I'm going to bring in a set of stairs, and I'll just go through a quick demo on what stairs are and how they work. So when you bring in your stairs, in the properties, it defaults to a total rise of 10124. Well, that's like 1.5 meters or something like that. But I know that I need my stairs to go to 9 foot, but I want the very top, this is going to be at 10 foot because this last step, that's the 10 foot. So I'm going to put in here the total rise of my stairs is 10 feet. And when I did that, my steps got much steeper, obviously, and I can stretch this out a little bit to make it the right size. If I know the actual length and width, I can type those in. But here's an important thing. My tread height and my tread depth. 12 inches isn't bad for a depth, but 8 is a little steep. Those are some steeper stairs. So what I might need to do is the default of 15 steps is not enough. I think 17 is better, and it'll bring down to about 7 inches. You can add, like maybe make it 18 if you want these steps not to be quite so high. I think I'll stick with 17. Okay. And if I wanted the tread width to be longer, Now that it's only 10 inches, let me stretch it a little bit. So now it's almost 12 inches. Yes, there's math we could do to make them the right length. When I look at the bottom of the stairs, I could do an open base, closed base down to the floor, open riser, which is kind of my favorite, or flush, which was the default. If I do open riser, I probably need to put something to support these so we can add a stringer. Okay? I can also change whether they're going up or down. They defaulted to going in this direction, which is cool. All right. I also could have brought in a spiral stairs. Another fun thing to play with. Same settings. I can set the height, the number of steps, the open riser. All right. And again, show the stringer so they're not just floating. Although maybe they are floating because I could put a post in the middle. Okay. And these stairs, you can change the width very easily by getting a grip. You can change the inner radius to be smaller. Let's say that it's 12 inches. All right. You can switch the spiral if you need to. And then I'm just going to leave them open on the outside because that's cool. All right. All of our stairs have the ability to add in a landing too. So if these stairs were actually going up even higher, I could go in and snap a landing right there and then add more stairs to them. Weirdly enough, the default is to go down. So the only way to really go over here and fix that is to use the tab down, tab, 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 hit my space bar so that it's going upward. Okay? So I can add another stairs. Same thing for my spiral stairs. I can come in here, add a landing, and then add another one. This one does go up. Okay? And then I can do the same settings. Open riser, center post. So those are very cool. Once you have your stairs designed, you can also add in railings. This is kind of important, right? There are 3 different types of railings. There's a standard, glass-filled, and double pipe. If I bring in the standard, this railing snaps to stairs and landings. That's what it does. It doesn't snap to anything else. So when I come in here to my stairs, you can see it snaps right in. Okay. It snaps in, like I can do this. It'll snap to the landings if I have landings. Okay. Pretty neat. If I bring in a railing and I decided, well, I meant to do the glass or the double pipe, you can always switch them. Let me just get this in here so you can see it. Let me click this right here. And I say, well, I actually wanted it to be glass filled or double bar. I can also add in posts. I can say, oh, and there is a handrail. You can make it circular or rectangular. So if you're doing a more industrial, I'm going to add in some even posts. And this did them like every step. I can say maybe every 2, maybe every 4, or maybe I'm going to take the post out altogether and put in my own posts. And so we have a post tool right here. So you could say, well, I'm actually just going to have one sort of in the middle, like that. Okay, we don't really need that many posts in there. The same on the spiral and on here. If you go to the spiral and you click on that, and you can add even posts, and you can space them out one every other or every 6. All right. You can also add posts to the railings on the landing. So let me just go in and say I'm going to put a couple posts in here like that. So that's pretty easy to add posts and the railings. They just want to snap. If you wanted to do a railing sort of on the floor, you know, you're doing a bank and you want to show some things on the floor, you can use this custom railings. I know it looks curved, but it's not. You can just go in. I'm just going to draw it in 2D so it's a little easier for me to see what I'm doing, right? So let's say I did that. I put some railings in here and I did it a little wonky on purpose to show you again those awesome help lines that you can, if you needed it to be square and you didn't draw it square, you could. This doesn't have the ability to add even posts, so you will have to go in and draw your own posts in if you want them in here. All right, so what does this mean for my drawing? I'm going to delete these guys. All right, let me delete the circular too. Cool trick, if you want to delete a bunch of things at once, let's bring that stuff back. Cool trick, if I use my red X, did y'all know that if you just drag like that and let go, it's super fast erase? Huh, how about that? All right, so I like these stairs, and I'm going to move them into my space. And to do that, I'm just going to drag them into my space. Well, the minute they get over a level, they jump up. And I'm having a hard time seeing, so another trick I'll do while I'm working with levels is frequently I'll change the appearance of my walls to be transparent. Okay, now I can see in, all right? So did you notice that when I brought this in, it snapped right to, can you see how it's right on my first floor? And when I move it in 3D, it snaps. So if I move it here, it'll snap up. See how it's snapping up to that level, right? So you kind of have to be careful when you're moving it 3D because it'll snap up and down. But in 2D, it will not ever snap to a different level. You can literally just move it over here to where you want it. And I'm eyeballing it in here like that. And it did snap up. I lied. All right, there we go. Let's move it. Oh, it does want to move today. So there you go. How do I move it without it going up? I'm going to hold my shift key down. Nope, that's not doing it. I'll use my arrow keys today. So using my arrow keys, I'm going to move it to there like that. And it's in the right location. When I click on, I'm going to go back to my levels. I want to adjust my hole. See, the hole is not quite right for my stairs. If I go in here and click on the hole, I'm going to just adjust the hole to match my stairs. I did just kind of throw that hole in there, didn't I? There we go. So now the hole and the stairs line up. Except this guy moved again. There we go. Okay. So now I have a stairs, goes through a hole in the floor. I didn't leave myself much landing. Just forgive my design skills today. I'm just going to pretend that's perfect. All right. I also don't want anybody falling off of this rail or this edge. So I'm going to use that railing tool back here, the custom rails, and put in a custom railing. First thing I'm going to make sure I'm current on the mezzanine. You see I'm current on the mezzanine. Then when I bring in my rail, I'm going to start about here and start drawing, right? Like that. There is a neat, I can put an arc in here. So let's just do that, like to about here. Oops, I stopped. Let me do it again. My mouse went off the screen, so I'll do it again. How many times has that happened to you? Your mouse goes off the screen when you're doing something. Oh, got to start over. Right? Arc. We're going to go back to line. I'll go to here. And I'm just going to go to about here. Something happened with my hole in my stairs. I am really having a tough time with them today. This is the fun part about levels, is that they want to snap wherever they want to snap. There we go. All right. Now my railing, I went a little crazy here. Remember I pointed out earlier that I can get a grip on it and use my fabulous help lines from Configura. I love those. One of my favorite things. Okay? And now I have my railing on the mezzanine. I'll add in some posts, maybe switch it up to be the double bar to match other areas of my drawing. Okay? Let's go back to the PowerPoint now. Couple notes. You can change the overall height and number of steps. You can use the railings to snap to the stairs and landings, and then you use a custom railing for other areas that you're not using with stairs. So you can use them on the floor, you can use them wherever you want. All right, so let's go on to the next topic, and that is output. All right, it's time to do some output. I'm going to switch to a drawing that I've completed, and I've done materials and finishes and things like that. Some of you who have had training with me will recognize it. It's the one that I use in my advanced class. And so let's go Alt-Tab back to my drawing. And I'm going to switch to my completed drawing. So this is a drawing that I do frequently in training. It looks a little bit like the one we just did. I've got ceilings in here, fluorescent ceilings. I've got furniture, right? It's completely done. And I'm ready to get some output. I want to give you a cool trick. Right now, I can't see anything because of these ceilings. And they're making me a little bit annoyed because I don't want to move them because getting them back into place was tough enough in the first place. So I'm going to go up to my tools and I'm going to use filter. Filter is one of my favorite things to use when I'm working with the ceiling because I can go into lighting and I can filter these lights out and now I can see into my drawing. So let's take a look at it with my ceilings off. First thing I notice is that those lines are still there, right? And I'm going to turn them off back in my settings under level settings. Remember this? So level boundaries, I'm going to turn that off, all right? And you'll notice here there's a combining calculation while I'm here. Let me just click this. Let's talk about the calculation for a second and article views. There's furniture on both floors. It's just Fika, right? And if I go to my calculation, you'll see here's all my furniture for both floors combined together, right? But what if I wanted to order it one floor, the mezzanine furniture separate from the main floor? That's what this little combine calculation checkbox, we uncheck it. Now when I go to my same calculation, it has added in a column called levels. And it has whether it's on the mezzanine or the first floor. All my furniture is correctly put on the right levels. All right. And now what I want to do is I'm going to, maybe I can sort it, right? So I could go in here and, I could group by level. It's a new column, just go by levels. And so what I'll do is now, oops, I clicked an extra column. I did not mean to do that. So now I have my first floor and my mezzanine, okay? That's nice. I could do another article view where in this article view, maybe that I'm only going to do, I only want to do the mezzanine, right? So mezzanine only, I can filter. This time I'm going to filter by levels. So mezzanine only, I uncheck first floor, right? I probably don't need to be grouping by level at this point, but there you go. I also can go in and maybe, because I want both, I want best of both worlds. I want to be able to do the first floor and the mezzanine, but I also want one more article view that is literally total product combined, right? So let's say I want to make a combined article view. Well, first off, I can't group by level, but here's the trick. This is the one time that you're going to take your levels and you're going to uncheck split by. This is, some of you may have seen this before, this little drop down right here. This means that there are two lines with something different that are combined together. So now I have the best of both worlds. Little caveat, if I come back into my drawing and I go to level settings and I click combine in calculation, that column is deleted from this drawing, which means that those article views, you can't just turn it on and off, because those article views will no longer sort by mezzanine, or they will no longer subtotal. The column is literally deleted. So even if you turn it back on, you would have to remake these article views. So make a decision early in your project. Do I need these combined or do I not? Okay. So that's a quick calculation view. The next thing I'm going to talk about is paper views. How are we going to print this? All right. So when I'm printing right now, let's say that I want to print and I'll go back to my other drawing real quick just to kind of show you something. So I'm looking at my drawing. Remember I said I want to just sew my first floor, all right? And I can do that. But if I'm in my regular drawing and I use filter, I'm going to show you this is a little different. There's two different things. These view buttons turn off things that are on different levels. But filter is another way to turn something off that we're going to use when we print. If I filter out the mezzanine, you'll notice that my stairs go away and some of my walls. Let me tell you why that is. We have tools, categorization, levels is in here. You're used to this categories, but now there's levels. So when I'm in here and I have these windows that I inserted, for example, and the stairs, right? The stairs are actually on both the mezzanine and the first floor. The window right here, it's on base. Did you even notice that? Watch what happens when I turn off my base. Those windows went away. They didn't get categorized correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these two windows on, instead of the base, I'm going to put them on the mezzanine. All right. So now if I turn off the base, all right, that's good. And the stairs, they did default to being on both categories. That's kind of a cool thing that they do. But I also want to make sure this wall, it did default to being on both, and this wall is only on the first floor though, right? So if I right click here, notice this wall goes away. And I kind of want that one to be on. So what I'll do is I'll click on this wall and I'll say I want it to be on both the mezzanine and the first floor. And this is when you're working. However, the opposite is true when you do filtering. So when I do filtering, if I do filter and I filter out the mezzanine, it literally turns off anything that has any relationship to the mezzanine. So we have to come up with another solution when we're printing. Another solution might be, and I just turned them so that they were all on that. I'm going to do it differently now. I'm going to say anything that's on both I can make a new category, a new level, or I can say, you know what? I want my stairs, click on the stairs, to only be on the base, so it doesn't turn off. I want this wall to only be on the base. And I want this wall to only be on the base. Now you're saying, well, that's just silly. Well, the only problem with it, this is the workaround we have to do in order for when we want to go print, all right? When we want to print, when we go to paper view, in order to filter things out. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into paper view. Let me load in a D-size paper. And I'm going to bring in a viewport. I got a black and white 1/4 inch 2D viewport. All right. Click, click. Oh, let me rearrange this a little bit. All right. Here's my viewport. Right now, I'm sort of seeing everything. The first floor, remember this is on the first floor, and the mezzanine. And I only want to see in this viewport the items that are on the first floor. If I go into my visibility, here's our second filter. So if I were to filter out mezzanine, This is where it's important. I left my base on and my first floor, or I could filter out the first floor. These things are on the base. All right. If something is on if you filter something out, it filters everything out. So back to my other drawing. You can see in my demo, same thing. If I bring in my 2D viewport, this was a little bit more complicated because this one has, come on. This one has a whole lot of stuff going in. And I've got stuff on the base that I don't want to show in any of my prints. And I've got the ceiling grid. I've got a lot of things going on. I'm going to use a lot of filtering. So when I go in here to filter, one, I'm going to go filter out my lighting, right? Because I don't need that when I'm printing. I'm also going to filter out, say, this is going to be my first floor. I want to filter out my mezzanine. In this case, I created another level called both. So I can filter out my base. So now I have the items that are on both levels and the first floor. And then I'm going to flip that around and say, I want to do the mezzanine. So now I have the items that are on both and the mezzanine. So this is the workaround for getting, so when I do my installation, now everything else is going to be the same. I want to do my panels. I want to do my components, right? If I want to do the same thing for, the mezzanine, there's my components and my panels. Pretty cool. All right, let's talk about rendering now. So I've got this drawing, which I've said is complete, and I'm going to go into the photo lab. And I have a photo right here that I've just started, and I'm ready to add in, start rendering. And because I've got walls all the way around, this is something that I like to do. I always start with product lighting, and then I go up to the 2D, 3D up here and click on 2D. And use clipping. So I want to see, I'm going to do a rendering sort of looking in this way. So I'm going to hit my clipping tool and do something like that. I don't want to include these pots down here. I might actually go in and you can see that I'm missing that front furniture there. Let's do another little clip to include this little front furniture. And then what I can do is I can set my camera. This is really useful, especially when you're doing a large rendering like this. Trying to get your camera in the right location is sometimes tricky. So you can just move your camera. I'm going to say I want to look kind of in the middle and I want to look right straight into my space. Well, right now the camera is at kind of a high location, so I'm going to put it at 10 foot as like a starter. Just so that when I get back to my picture, it still didn't do it. There we go. Let's go down here. Oh, I forgot to hit enter. So 10 foot enter. There we go. All right. So just to kind of get your camera at a starting point, you can do that. And you can find the camera. If you couldn't find it in the drawing, you can locate the target if you couldn't find the target. And you can locate both of them at the same time. All right. That's kind of cool. Now when I go back to 3D, because I use the clipping, right, I have a perfectly good view in my space. I always go in, just as a matter of practice, how I render is I usually go down and change my camera angle. Again, my elevation's a little weird here for some reason. Let me put it back to 10 foot, 10 foot, maybe a little high. So let's say 7 foot instead. That's better. I usually add in some perspective and back it up a little bit. There we go. Here's a nice angle of my space. Looking in. I always set my pitch at 0. See, I'm struggling with this right now. Let's put this at 6 foot. There we go. I like to do most of my renderings. I set my elevation 6 or 7 feet. Oh, I have to add a foot for the fact that I'm 18 inches up. So 7 foot, 0 pitch. This is how I like to do my renderings of interior with a mezzanine to start. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So I got my camera set. And now this is the other tip I want to talk about with levels. This is not a photo lab class. There's a zillion things we could talk about. But I have this in here and I want to now put a panorama behind. It did just take me a minute to get my camera about where I want it. So what I'm going to do is, I can change it to blue, right? Or black or faded. There's some, predefined colors. I'm going to switch to panorama. And I find that sometimes this is a little difficult when you pick on one, like what are we actually looking at, right? Because I want to do, say, like this Vancouver, right? But I have no idea what I'm looking at without messing up my angle. Here's my cool trick. You can go up here and turn off your levels. Then go down here. Let's pick a different background. Let's do this big city. Right? It's clearly not lined up. I might take and scale it a little bit so it's a little bit further away. I can change the X so that, see this line right here? That's where the image wraps around and touches itself. I don't really want that to show up. Okay? I can change my Y. So there we go. Now we have the city outside my window. So we're on a fairly high level, as it were, right? And so now when I turn this back on, the image is outside the window. Even though I can't tell, it'll be more the way I want. I also might turn off my base in this case because I've got a little floor showing here. But when I flip it around to do the other way, I'm going to want to see that because I've got those cool plants outside. Cool? So that's where levels come into rendering. I'll just show you. I did this one already once. Let's see. Here's a different background. And then I flipped it around to do it from above, changing my clipping, all right, turning on my background so you can see those little plants out the window, all right. So super easy to use clipping. I always recommend use clipping with levels, but this is the other tip is that you can turn those levels on and off for using with, to get your background. And you can do this even if you didn't have multiple levels. You could just turn off the base. That's so helpful when you're drawing. It'll turn off your walls and everything, and then you can see your background. So that's a cool tip I have. May Alt tab back to my PowerPoint. So some little notes. Use the level settings to do a combined article view. We went through all the different level. We turned it on. And then we could combine them or separate them. And just you might want to decide which items are going to be printed together when you're setting up your levels. That's why I made one. I made a level called both and put them on both levels, or you could do it on your base. So remember, filter turns off everything that's associated with it. So if something is on multiple levels or multiple levels and you filter one level, it's going to filter them all off. So you may have to modify that. All right. Another output note, just go into the 2D tab in your photo lab to clip and position the camera. I showed you how to turn off the different levels so that you can see the panorama. And I also want to point out that twin motion is amazing with these levels. When you export this, everything that I just set up, I can export to twin motion. The renderings are beautiful. You can do movies through these. It's just seamless. Well, all right. That's it for my presentation today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I run into you some other time in the future. And if you need anything, contact me. Thank you. Bye.